Oops, not there we go. Hi everybody, it's Margaret. Welcome to my channel, Homeschool Honey. And in today's video, I thought I would take another stab at talking to you guys about how I create a unit study or a thematic unit or a literature study, however you want to, however you want to describe it. Pardon me, hairs all of a sudden were bothering me. So yesterday I came on and I talked kind of generally about how I plan a unit study. And I realized I started thinking, like, if you were new to this, you probably just kind of got a little bit of a skating of the surface of what I do and how I do that, because I plan kind of generally. And let me show you what I'm talking about. So yesterday I shared with you guys how I just kind of break it down by reading, by writing, and I go through and do kind of different web searches to find the different types of things. And I just break it down into subject matter and sections like this. But I didn't really go into like, well, that's great, but what do you do on day one? What do you do on day two? And the reason that I kind of start this way and not dive super deep into like getting really specific about like I put this on the first day and this on the second day, because in our homeschool, or the way I homeschool the kids, it's all really flexible and it's all it moves a lot, and based on where we are and what I see in the moment, it can make things take a totally different turn, which I have done so many times. I've created this beautiful lesson, this beautiful unit, and then in the middle of it realize, wow, what they really need is for us to talk about context clues, or what they really need, or they're really kind of getting into this other area. And so it takes a turn, we could be in the middle of talking about Vikings, and I think we're going to be talking about battles and the Celts and da 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 da, but all of a sudden they just latch onto long ships, or they latch onto the way their houses are built, and so everything kind of shifts and we go in that direction instead, and we're still able to bring in math and science and all of these different things, but where their interests are and where their brains kind of go, I try to follow. So that's kind of why I made a big kind of sketch of what we're going to do. But I wanted to bring in a little bit more to share with you guys, especially, oh boy, what have I done here? Hang on. Okay, I see. I wanted to talk a little bit more about how I kind of break it down, because as much as I try to break it down into different subject matters and days, keep in mind that even though I do this to a certain extent, it's, as I said, really changeable, because as things go, they change. So I started breaking this book down a little bit, and I thought I would stop and go ahead and come back live and share that with you guys. So what I've done, I love using Google Docs. So I've broken it down into these different tabs. So here you see Half Magic Reading, and I've got a new tab for Writing, Spelling, Grammar. I've got one for Math, Cooking, Science and Social Studies, and Art. Now, one of the things, I don't always do it this way. I tend to like to do things paper pencil, but it's a lot easier for me to show it to you this way. Another thing about breaking it down like this is that sometimes the things that we do overlap. So we might be writing out a script for a stop animation, and so that would encompass so many different things. It would encompass our writing, our grammar, our spelling, our art, and so breaking it up into pages like this, almost, that's why I kind of do paper pencil, because my brain works better that way. I can see it more better. Know what my grammar lesson for tomorrow is going to be. Okay, so, oops, I keep flipping back and forth. So basically what I did was, again, I haven't read this book yet, but I wanted to look at it and see what the chapters were like, how long they are, because I want to break it down. Now, this is going to be the first book where I've gotten both my kids, I've decided to start doing like literature studies with both of them together, because they're kind of both reading on this similar-ish level, even though they're 2 years apart. Well, the skills that they need can be accomplished this way and make my life a lot easier too. So we're starting with this book, Half Magic, and so I was flipping through it, taking a look at the length of the chapters, because some books, the chapters are shorter and longer, and I've got to decide, also when you're looking at it, like, how are they laid out? Are they, some books, the print is much, much smaller, much larger. How many pages are we really going to be able to tackle? Of course, we could always do more or less, but just to kind of get an idea of that. So what I decided was that there's a kind of an intro. So I'm going to read the intro to them to kind of get it all set up, that prior, what's going on in the story. And then what I'm going to do next, the chapters aren't super long. The first chapter is like 17 pages or so, which I try to make sure that the kids are actively reading for 20 minutes during our reading time. We do have a silent reading time in our day that's also built in. So, oops, wrong thing. So basically over here, by the way, hi, my name is Margaret. I don't know if I have any friends watching right now because I have everything shut off. There we go. Okay. So basically, say hey if you're out live in the chat. Say hi. What I've done over here is I broke it down into day 1, and I'll read the intro, pages 1 through 17. That's the first chapter. And then what I'm going to have them do is just read silently for like 5 minutes. Just let them go for it and just kind of monitor and watch, make sure they're actually reading, which their mind are pretty good about it. And then we'll take turns reading aloud. Now, I try to mix this up when I taught in the classroom, because you don't want it to be predictable. Because if they know, okay, we're going to take turns reading out loud, Mommy always starts. So when I'm doing my silent reading to start with for 5 minutes, by pre-read or whatever, I'm not even going to really read because I know Mom's going to pick it up. So mix it up so they don't really know who's going to read first or anything like that. So they're actually reading. So we'll take turns reading, and I do include myself. Hang on, I gotta move my foot real fast. The reason I do that, there are certain things I hesitate doing for and with my kids. Sorry, you guys, it's poking me in the leg down here. Because I don't want it to turn into them thinking that, oh, well, Mommy's just really good at this. I'm not good at this. I don't want it to turn into that, like, look at how I do this and how amazing I am at it. You know what I mean? Because it's to be learning, to be teaching, is the point. So, but I do want to make sure that I take a section to read to model the flow, the pace, the punctuation, so that they can see how it's done. For example, when we did Odd and the Frost Giants, Neil Gaiman reads his book on YouTube. So instead of me doing it, then I would have Neil like read it. So my child would read first, silently, and then I would have my child listen to the audio of it just to kind of cement it in there. Same kind of deal. So we'll take turns reading, including me, and then we'll stop after certain sections. I won't have them read all the way through the whole chapter and then stop and talk about it. So we'll stop during the story, just to kind of check in and see. And this is where I, as the teacher, am going to kind of tweak what we're doing or which direction we're going in. So I won't really know, technically what we're going to be working on until we get into it and I see where their needs are. Now, your kids. So I know my kids really could benefit from reading with expression and paying attention to punctuation. And I think a lot of kids are like that. So I will definitely think that in that realm as we're going into it, because I know that's something we've been working on a lot. But so I'll stop after, as we're listening, as we're reading together, there are going to be places in the story where it's a natural stopping point where I'll say, okay, let's stop and check in. Let's see, check to see if they're comprehending it or model, even just when I flipped through that first chapter, I saw like, ooh, there's a couple of words here that they may not know, like docile, Catherine's a middle girl, docile disposition, and the comfort of her mother. So, once we get past the point where they're describing the children, I might stop and say, geez, I don't know, what does that mean? Like, are you the comfort to me? What is a comfort to your mother? What does that mean? So taking the time to talk about it, and even acting like, this is where your acting comes in, like you don't get, like, what is that? the comfort of her mother. What does that mean? How would you be the comfort of your mother? So talking about things in that way. Also, I just grabbed these discussion questions. This is something to do. I do this when I read aloud to my kids. I do this when we have books that we read together, where we have discussion questions before, during, and after, so that you just kind of get an idea of where their brains are before you start reading. Like, so before we start reading this book, like, okay, guys, let's take a look at this. What do we think this book is going to be? Like, Tales of Magic, Half Magic, and then like this is knight in shining armor all broken in pieces. That's weird. What's up with that? And so we'll talk about, what we notice. So each day we'll do that. And you're like, let's talk about what happened yesterday. Like in our silent, when I'm not our silent reading, our read aloud that like I'm reading to them right now, the Wild Robot Escapes. So whenever we start up again, like, oh my gosh, where did we leave Roz? Oh, she's in that rowboat. What do you think is going to happen? Oh my gosh. Is she going to make it back? Oh, so we really dive into like, what do we read? Because it might have been a couple days. So, pardon me. So I'll do this before, during, and after our reading each day for each section that we do. And then as you're doing that, pay attention to what they're noticing, what they're not noticing. Pay attention to what you think is important for them to be noticing. And did they get that? So it's something that you can address either the next day or in the moment. Like, well, did you guys notice whatever it is that you feel like your kids needed to notice? So there's that. And again, I just grabbed these from a site. If you Google, what did I even do? Engaging questions for readers, or before, during, after. When I taught, we did a lot of Bloom's taxonomy of questioning, which, has kind of levels of questioning. There's many, many different models of it. Okay, so that's kind of where we go. And then here I wrote, listen as they read, notice where they're stumbling. Is it punctuation? Is it fluency? Is it larger words? And also, this is another thing, like, I don't do a whole lot. I did with odd. I take that back. But of like vocabulary, like, let's write the definition of this word. I did a little bit of it with odd because it was kind of fun, because there were fun things to illustrate, like fjords and Viking type stuff. So what I'll probably do just as we're going with vocabulary is pointing out words like, what is docile? Do we know what that means? Like, let's read the sentences around it. Let's use our context clues and try to figure out, like, what does it mean Catherine's docile? What does that make her, like, her personality? Now, and then at that point we can start talking about, like, who else do we know that's docile? Do we ever know any other characters from other stories or books or TV shows or that would be considered docile, and trying to get them to put it in context outside the book. So going in that direction. So more of a verbal discussion. Because honestly, when in the classroom, having the kids, write the vocabulary word and write it in a sentence and draw a picture is like busy work. So I just really am striving to not do that to my kids. Anyway, so notice what questions they're struggling answering. So like as you're doing these questions, right? Notice where they're struggling to make those connections. Like, I don't know, Mom, what were the main ideas of this story? I don't know. Just notice when they're struggling to answer your questions on certain things. And that's where you're kind of, that will drive your instruction for the next day. So even if I wrote like, well, today we're doing cause and effect, right? It might change. I can have that as a plan. Like, you know what? And this is why I don't really like to flesh out these big giant lesson plans anymore, because I've learned so many times that I'll write out this big, beautiful lesson plan for cause and effect. And it turns out my kids get it like that. But what they really needed was, or what I noticed is they needed. So just being able to be flexible and move on the fly with that. So that being said, let me come back over here and show you guys. Let me make this bigger. Hang on. Zoom it down for you so you can see more. So keeping that in mind, I put these things here, King Arthur, knights, all of this stuff for reading, but I think I'm going to move that more toward, even though I know it's, I'm moving it over to social studies, even though I know it's mythological, not even mythological, but it's fictional. I'm putting it down there for now, just in case we go that way. So yesterday when I was looking through all the different types of things that we were seeing when I did just searches for the book, and for Half Magic, what were kinds of things I was seeing popping up pretty regularly or on Teachers Pay Teachers, what kind of activities. I wasn't copying the activities, I was copying like, okay, what were they kind of pulling from the book? Well, I see cause and effect, predictions. Now this book probably will really lend itself to making predictions because it has to do with, they're making these wishes on this coin, but they don't come true exactly. So you kind of have to predict what the wishes, what could happen or how could it have happened differently. That's their predictions, right? Analogies, conflicts, etc. So I might try to plan for some of that cause and effect or some analogies for our different lessons. Hang on one second. Oh, there we go. For the next day. So that is something that I will come back and kind of flesh out. And if you're wondering, like, what are you talking about for cause and effect? Well, if you Google like cause and effect, let me pop this up so I can show you. So what I would do, let's see if I've got this here. I do. Okay, let me slide it down. So what I tend to do when I'm looking for activities like that, I will do like hands-on cause and effect. Hang on. Cause and effect activities so that I can, sometimes I'll just click on images because it'll show, to me, this is not hands-on. This is a cut and paste, right? So to me, that just because you're cutting and pasting, it's not a hands-on activity. So what would be a better way to show a cause and effect activity? I guess, again, it would have to depend on what's going on in the story or, going outside and saying, okay, let's talk about real life cause and effects that are going on while the wind is blowing and the leaves are falling and just things like that, like more interpersonal type things. Or, hey, remember at the park the other day when, you were swinging on that branch and it broke, just more things like that. Or if you feel like that's too kind of babyish, it depends on your child. So cause and effect activities for intermediate. So for older, see again, just look at that. This is the worksheets. I mean, like this would probably be too easy for my kids. You think. So the sun is out and it melts the ice cream, cause effect, right? I mean, if you want to take it that way, but if you're wanting to go a little bit more, like here's an earthquake. Well, okay, the cause. Here's the earthquake. What's the effect? House gets torn apart. People need a new home. They're going to have to do a lot of cleanup. There's rubble everywhere, smashed cars. So taking it more, I think this would be something that's a little bit more high, I don't want to say higher level, because you're, especially homeschool, the kids are, you could be 7 and working on whatever level, but just depending on where your kid is, more, because the ice cream in the sun is a little more simplistic and this one would be a little more complex. But these are the types of things. And if you, for example, we, have gone through hurricanes. Well, this earthquake kind of hits home with that, So talking about cause and effect relationships in a bigger way, or depending on other areas that your kids have been interested in, what bringing that in, say one of my kids is competing with, what's it called? Shooting sports, right? And they're competing for, I don't know. And so just trying to find a way like, well, you know what? You didn't do so great at this last competition. And so what was the cause of that? And, enumerating those things and what are the ways that we can fix that? And so really it kind of, that's why I feel bad, because I was creating this, let me flip it back over again. When I was creating this document yesterday, kind of mapping everything out, and I didn't go into breaking it down day by day for my lessons, that's why. So on day 2, I'll kind of sketch in there. Let's do cause and effect. I'll come back in just a second to that. But then I'll, put in here real world examples. And then another thing that we could talk about, this would be a good place for, depending on what's going on in the book, say we're doing some sort of service projects. So we're doing service projects and talking about like the causes and effects for service projects. My main goal is making sure that it's relevant to my kids' lives. So me, printing off some of these, cut and paste worksheet doodads, it's not relevant to their actual life. So I try to do that, to bring it into where they are. Now, this is not to say when we have our off weeks, we have our curriculum that we'll go back to if we're in between stuff. So there's that too. So anyway, all right. So I hope this is making sense, you guys. But I wanted to come back because it really was bothering me that maybe what I did yesterday wasn't as fleshed out. And I wanted to explain kind of why. Okay, so now on day 2, I'll also do like this stuff, all of this for our reading. I'm just going to like copy and paste it, even though like the pages will be different, etc., etc. And the questioning, like here, this questioning might be different based on what happened the day before. So I'll just, write before, during, and then after. So that'll be, reading pages, whatever it is, 18 to whatever for the next section. And I mean, this book is pretty, the way it's written, it's easy for me to kind of like zip through, scan it for any kind of words that I think, oh, that might be something that they, that might be something that we need to. But overall, it seems pretty easy. But we'll see. So there's that. And then I also know just from reading some of the summaries of the book that there's stuff to do with medieval times. There's stuff to do with the Middle East. So there's a few different things that we can draw in from there as well. Okay, so that's kind of how our reading is going. And I know, hang on, on here, kind of depending on where we go and the discussions we have, I'll move into some of these like analogies or conflict, man versus nature, etc. And then predictions are going to be pretty easy along the way. So then I will come over and start looking at what we're going to do for our writing, our grammar, and our spelling. And a lot of times that ends up getting really combined for us. We have dailygrams that we do. Hang on, let me make sure I'm on the right page over here. There we go. As you can see, this is now, I'm grabbing the wrong thing. Hang on. So here I've got my half magic writing, spelling, grammar up top. You can see there. So a lot of times these things get pushed together in our curriculum or whatever we're doing at home because they tend to lend themselves to that. I've talked a little bit about this before, but my kids it turns out one of my kids is not dyslexic, but we thought that he was. So, but the other is. Anyway, they both struggle with spelling. So no matter how many times I have been giving them the same list of words for probably 3 weeks, and they will study them. They will do this. They will do that. They will do the other thing. We'll work on them. Then we'll take our spelling test and they will spell some of the words correctly and some of them incorrectly. So I'm like, you know what? We didn't do so great. Let's do these words again. And then the next week, they'll spell different words correctly, but they'll spell the other ones wrong. So it's just like, what are we doing here? Why are we spinning our wheels doing this? So I decided, since we're trying to make this all real world, let's make our spelling real world. And so I have it incorporated into our writing each day. So a lot of times with our writing, the kids will do Google Docs. They'll, for 1 week we were working on writing emails. So they were writing emails to their uncle and their daddy and, so they would write their email and then they would have to go through and proof it and spell check it and do all of these things that would hit their writing, their grammar, their spelling. So it was all tied up into one thing. So that's what we're going to do as far as that. So on yesterday when I was talking about the different things that we're going to do for writing, some of the different ideas that came up were, talking about leprechauns granting wishes, and then semantics, which we get into semantics and wordplay a lot around here because I'll ask a question. What was it? We had this discussion today. Oh, one of my kids was making this banging noise. We were out at the sports place for my son to do his soccer, and my other child was making these banging noises around down this hall. And I said, "Were you banging on that door?" "No, I wasn't banging on the door." So if I wasn't asking the question specific enough and so I was really trying to get very precise with my language to get the correct response from my child. So we do this kind of thing with semantics anyway, to try to be precise with our language. So talking about semantics, which can be fun, and making sure that your language is precise. Again, so we're going to be talking about like leprechauns and how tricky they can be if you're trying to grant a wish. And how could these things go wrong? How to catch up. So there were different websites that we're going to do. Be careful what you wish for. And so what I thought I would do, this is day 1, is just have them write a couple wishes, and like I'm going to pretend like I'm the leprechaun. So I'm going to just write this on here. Have them write wishes to a leprechaun. And then, or another thing, since we're working on the same book, is I could have them switch wishes. So they're each reading each other's wishes and pretending, and then drawing out how they could grant the wish without it being exactly what the person's asking for. So let's say my son says, "I wish for," I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good one. "I wish for a new video game. I wish for a new video game." And so my other child can come back and say, "Okay, here it is." And it's, Pac-Man or something that he probably doesn't want. So I'm trying to make sure that the wish, I wish to take a vacation, right? And so then the vacation ends up being something, I don't know. You're going to a volcano and it's really hot and miserable. I don't know. Anyway, so that's probably what we'll do. And then switch wishes. And this is going to take us into something. Do I not have it on the right page? No, I don't. See, I can't see what I'm doing. Oh, sorry. Let me pop it back to the top. Nope, wrong one. Hang on. That's the wrong one too. There we go. So they'll switch wishes. They can illustrate it. And what this is going to do is it's going to build up because my kids are getting into videography. So this is going to slowly build us into creating either a stop animation or another kind of video where they can, enact this. One of them dresses up as a leprechaun, or we have a little animated one that they're pretending to talk to. So they're going to take this, and eventually they'll have to flesh it out into a sort of script for that. So the end goal here, building up to this, hang on, you can't see what I'm doing. No, that's not what I want to do. Okay, end goal is they're going to be fleshing these out into a script for a video. And I'm kind of letting them go figure out I'm going to let them decide the direction they want to go with this. If they want to do a stop animation, or if they want to do something where they're acting it out, or they want to draw it cartoony, or I don't know. So that's where I'm heading with that. So there's a whole different style for writing, like script writing. So we'll have to talk about that a little bit too. I think they've done some of it though, so it shouldn't be too hard. Then another thing, again, I don't know how long this will take. This is why it's hard for me to say, day 2, day 2. I mean, it could be something that takes 5 days. So let's say day 5, is the end goal. So throughout the first week, this is kind of where we'll go. So coming up for the next week is when I'll jump into some of these other things, like what would the story be different because of course I haven't read this book yet, so I don't know how the story might be different if the lucky object was something else, like a lucky pen or a lucky shirt, how it would change the story. It might not. We'll find out. And then how would the story be different if it doubled your wish or if it was the opposite of what you wished? And so having them kind of take it in that direction as well. And they could write something like that. They could, it could be something we just talk about. Well, this is writing, so they need to write. And then, but that will take into the grammar, the spelling, and all of this type of stuff. Okay, so hopefully this is helpful a little bit more than what I did yesterday, because I know yesterday I was kind of just skating over everything and mapping it out. All right, so next up, what do I have up here? I have, math and cooking next. So we do have a math curriculum that we use. Hang on. I've got the wrong thing up again. There it is. Okay, math and cooking. So we do have a math curriculum that we use. And so some of the math we do, because we do, what's it called? Math UC. I like it. We were doing teaching textbooks last year, and there were things that I didn't like, things the kids didn't like. There were pros and cons. Anyway, the only thing about Math UC that I'm not 100% that I love is that the kids get through it really quickly, even though they're not always accurate. So we have to come back and fix things. So I'll probably still have them do at least one of their Math UC pages. Why isn't it's not typing on there? There we go. Day 1, Math UC. So they'll have that. This is something else. I have the kids have a clipboard for the day for their different stuff that I've got going on for them. So they've got a clipboard. That way, if we have to run somewhere, like, grab your clipboard, let's go. So that'll be on their clipboard. And they can do it before, during, after, whenever. So they'll have their Math UC. And then some of the things that we talked about in the overview for math, let me scroll down, were these things. So fractions, so halves, and things like that on fractions, which should be really easy for my kids. And then cooking, which is something I tried to make sure we did at least once a week, but haven't quite. So here's the pro. So we'll probably start, because I think in the book they talk about the mom, it just ran, like, just in passing mentions she makes breakfast. So I might have them, like, we'll do breakfast for dinner that night. Breakfast for dinner. And we'll make pancakes or waffles or something like that. And so what I'll have them do is look at the recipe, and then if it lends itself to that, and we'll half the recipe for the pancakes. So now if it takes 1 egg, we'll have to discuss, like, well, how do you half an egg? You put a half an egg in there. So, and if it doesn't quite, then we can, talk about, well, let's talk about doubling this recipe. How do we double it? So, and then, maybe we try it both ways. Why not? Because pancakes will freeze. If we get extras, we'll just throw them in the freezer. So, so that's probably what we're going to do on top of our math, is we'll talk about how do we double, how do we half, recipes. And this is probably a good opportunity. Oh, look, I have the wrong page up again. This is probably a good opportunity to talk about, how many teaspoons to a tablespoon. And honestly, I may know some of these off by heart, but it took me a long time to learn them. So having them figure out, like, well, if I don't know how many, okay, I got to double this, and this takes 2 teaspoons. Well, yeah, now it's 4 teaspoons, but how many tablespoons is that? Kind of conversions. This would lend itself to conversions in math, so, or in measurements. So it might be something that we spend a little time talking about as well, conversions in tablespoons, teaspoons, cups, quart, and that's another thing too. And I've seen these. Have you guys seen these? Like, they're measuring cups, but like the whole one looks like this, but then the half one is like a semicircle, and then the quarter is like the pie piece looking one. I don't have those, but talking about maybe having them play with that a little bit, like, let's see how many fourths, let's see how many, and then talking about, oh, what do I notice? So that might be a good thing that lends itself to that during this week. And again, this is where I'm saying, I don't know how long some of this is going to take. And as you guys know, as homeschool moms, things come up all the time. So, cup conversions, I'll put on like day 2, and then day 3, maybe we do teaspoon, tablespoon, and just talk about some of those different ones and actually get out the measuring spoons and play around with them and see, half a teaspoon, all of that good stuff. Okay, so I think that would lend itself to that for that week. And of course, just more cooking because I think it's helpful. Pardon me. Okay, so that's kind of that. And then also, again, as we read, things may come up and then I'll say, oh, you know what? That's really cool. And probably what I'll do is kind of like I did with Odd and the Frost Giants, is I of course took note of everything that we did, and then I created this unit and I put it up on Teachers Pay Teachers. So whatever we actually end up doing, I'll make a unit for it and put it up. But until we do it, I hate to do the work for it and then be like, oh, we didn't do any of this stuff, Okay, so next up, did I talk about I think I may have just put language arts on that. Oh, I'll go change it. I don't know how long I've been talking either. Where does it say? Okay, good. All right, so over here, science and social studies. Maybe I should just leave it there because, well, I don't know. I could talk. Basically, with the science and the social studies, yesterday when we were mapping it out, we talked about, in science, talking about magic tricks, illusions, alchemy, sleight of hand, coin tricks. So probably my kids have a magic set. And some of the instructions are a little bit confusing, or they don't quite get how to do them. So it might be something that we pull out and read the directions and talk about. Now I know some of you might be like, but magic tricks are not science. No, not technically, but there's ways to make them sciencey. And also, if that's not, your jam, then another thing you could do, let me come back and pull this other page up, is you can Google, hang on, kids science magic, where it's things that maybe they turn into something else. 35 experiments that are basically magic. Perfect. There we go. So looking through here, oh my gosh, yeah, creating crystals with borax, that's awesome. Explode a watermelon in your backyard. There we go. I don't know how I feel about that, but okay. Learn about chemical reactions with a lemon volcano. These are fun. We'll probably do some of these. Electric eels. Marinate gummy worms and turns them into electric eels. Oh, I'm copying and pasting this. Okay, that looks awesome. Okay, so now what I've done is just, hang on. I've copied and pasted that link into my lesson plan stuff. So basically I would come through and see like which one of these do I have the stuff to make? Ew. And others, rainbow paper. That looks fun. Which other ones? I'm looking real fast. I'm trying to find ones that really seem more like, because some of them we've seen before, We've done this. We've done the egg into a bouncy ball. Yeah, I think I did a video on it even. Okay, so trying to do things that are a little more hands-on, a little more fun. I think we used to have this magic science kit. Oh, gosh, this is a good one. Science tricks for kids. The one where you're poking the... I'm going to save this one too. Save this. Where you're poking the pin through like the balloon, and why doesn't the balloon pop and all of that. So that's pretty cool. Have y'all done that? It's been a while. So we'll do that. We'll go through some of these. And now, oh, thanks, Danny DeVito. Not right now, though. Maybe later. Okay. So I'll pick some of these out. Now, honestly, we don't get to science every single day. And especially if we're doing some of the cooking stuff, it's not realistic. Now, if I can incorporate cooking and science together, that would knock out 2 in 1, right? Okay. So let me close that up. And so that's probably where we'll go with that. And then some of the art will, hang on, right up here. I have another page open up for art, but as I said, some of the videography kind of counts as art. I have a feeling some of the science that we'll do will be kind of artsy, the illustrations. So I don't know that we'll dive really deep into that. But then again, we may if, like I say, we get into, wrong page. I have it not, yeah. If we get into some of these other ones, like Castle Times, Medieval, King Arthur, all of this stuff. And then there's the multicultural type stuff. If we do things with the Middle East, we can get into some of the art, depending on where the book takes it. So we'll kind of go where the book leads. But there's definitely lots of art that we can discuss, that especially if it's King Arthur's court, because goodness knows there's plenty of art that has been created based around that we can pull up and talk about. Okay, so I feel like I didn't do as okay. I feel like I did better than I did yesterday as far as talking about how I create a unit, but I'm not sure that it's going to be exactly what everyone's looking for, because again, I have learned not to nail myself down and write these elaborate plans that we'll do the first day, and then the next day we'll be like, that it's not going in the right direction. I think that was part of the problem I had. We were doing Build Your Library, and it would take us like 2 weeks to get through one of the lessons, like 1 week worth of lessons, because we would just veer off in so many different directions. So I just kind of gave up on that. So yeah, this is what we're going to do. And like I said, once we get done, I'll probably create a unit based on what we actually did and put it up on Teachers Pay Teachers, because it's easier once the job is done. We're doing it anyway, right? And then I'll put it up there. But it won't probably have a whole lot of paper pencil stuff. But I don't know. I'm hoping more and more teachers are going that way. I mean, if you're looking for busy work, definitely there were some half magic activities up there that were, vocabulary, write the words and blah, blah, blah. But I just don't want the whole reason that I started, well, one of the reasons I started homeschooling my kids was that wasn't working for them. So I don't want to go and buy something and just recreate that same what's not working at school back at home. So that's what we're doing. And I'll keep you guys posted as far as half magic goes. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you found some benefit from this video. And I will talk to you on the next one. Let me know what you think and if this was helpful for you or no. Because I can do it again. And I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for coming. Bye. It's starting.